Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Your organisation runs training courses for your staff and customers. Only problem is, it's time-consuming, inconvenient and costly. Take a leaf out of our book. The School of Hard Knock Knocks uses the online training platform by YZ, and our team and customers love it. It's simple to use, supports every media format, audio, video, text, and looks great on desktops, tablets and mobiles. And for a limited time, quote SHKK when you arrange a demo and get 10% off your first year's plan. YZ helps us deliver comedy courses around the world. Imagine what it could do for your organisation. YZ, that's WYZED.com. YZ, online learning made simple.
You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Steve Davis.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
Stig Wemyss is the director and co-producer of Is This Thing On?, a 6-episode comedy drama that follows 10 comedy newbies undertaking a souped-up stand-up comedy course as they get coached and challenged by some of Australia's most iconic stand-up comedians. In this School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast, host Steve Davis talks to Stig about how the show came to be, its premise, how he managed to capture all the drama within the metaphorical pressure cooker, as well as reminisce about getting nude. Full transparency, Steve Davis goes full Monty. If you've ever wondered what it takes to be a stand-up comedian, then listen to this podcast and then watch episode 1 of Is This Thing On? And now, here's Stig Wemyss.
Stig Wemyss, welcome to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast.
Steve, I feel like I spend every minute of my life with you at the moment because I'm, of course, currently editing episodes of Is This Thing On? And most days I sit down in front of my computer for 6 to 8 hours a day, and there you are, telling me what a great stand-up comedian you are.
Now, I don't think I ever said that.
No, you didn't say that. But, I tell you what is interesting, you start to understand the power you have of somebody who edits a reality show. I could actually make you look terrible. This podcast better be good, because if I'm not happy with it, I'm taking you down.
Yeah, well, I can re-release the podcast. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, right.
I think this is called détente, isn't it? Where
I say truth. Okay.
Okay, and look. And you've touched on somewhere I want to go shortly, but in case someone is not fully aware, what we're talking about is the pilot episode. It's called Is This Thing On? It's a 6-part TV series. It documents 10 students learning the art of stand-up comedy, and in full disclosure, I was one of those students, and Stig was the director and co-producer. Stig, what's your elevator pitch for Is This Thing On?
That's a good question, isn't it? I should have that ready to just sort of dish out. But essentially, it's pretty much what you just said. It's watching people from walks of life, all walks of life, learning how to stand up on the stage in front of strangers and make dickheads of themselves. No, that's not true. But bravely standing on stage in front of an audience and going from 0 to 100%. So in 6 days, these 10 students go from never having done stand-up comedy before to learning how to do it, and then at the end of that 6-day period, standing up on a stage in front of 300 people and presenting the 5-minute routine. For a lot of people, that is, public speaking is a very, very scary thought. And for a lot of people, the idea of even wanting to contemplate that, why would I do that? Why would I put myself through that? But I'm currently editing towards. I'm sort of starting to work on episode 6, where you and all the other students do actually go on stage, and the euphoria, the feeling, what people stay backstage when they come off stage after having just delivered a 5-minute stand-up comedy routine. It's things like, this is the best drama that I had. Oh my God, I'm never going to stop doing this. These people, everyone is just on a high from this experience. And I guess that's it. That's why people do it. That's not a 5-minute elevator pitch of the show. I've fucked that up, haven't I? But I'm into it, it's sort of my life at the moment, so it's hard not to sort of rave about it, really. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating show because it follows. It's not just about stand-up comedy. It's about human nature. It's about what drives these people. It's about watching them melt down when they recognise the pressure that they're under. It's about them learning the art of timing and how to deliver a joke and craft a joke. Fascinating.
Now, it's gone live, the first episode, the pilot episode, and people have been watching it. I can see it's been released on YouTube. We can see the viewing count numbers are starting to pick up. But tell me, what do we see? Describe aesthetically the format of the show.
Well, the School of Hard Knock Knocks, the way it came about really was that the School of Hard Knock Knocks exists, and it does this anyway. It teaches people how to be stand-up comedians. And Maury came to me and said, this is a show, this is a documentary series, because it is every time we do one of these shows, there's always drama, there's conflict, there's tears, there's happiness, joy. It's got all the right elements. And I said, I agree, good idea. But the way the School of Hard Knock Knocks works really is that 10 students go there, and over 6 days they have one teacher, they might have one guest comedian who comes in. It all takes place within the classroom, and really it would be just like filming school in a way. So when Murray came to me with the idea, I thought, well, I love the idea of doing this, but I probably need to just throw a few things in to make it, to heighten the stakes, I guess. So over 6 days, 10 people every day. They have, in the morning is all about classroom. They learn from, they practice, they do their routines, they work with the main host, the main teacher, Glenn Nicholas, and he works with them on their material, and they do it for each other, and they pull it apart and dissect it, and he helps them work on it. And then they have a guest comedian who comes in for the afternoon and speaks to them. Each episode is a different guest comedian, and then that guest comedian then takes the class on an outing, something that is relevant to what they've been lecturing in the classroom about. So, for example, one of the teachers, Chris Franklin, takes all the students to a primary school, and they all have to improvise a 1-minute routine in front of a room full of 30 10-year-olds, all designed to, test their skills, rapidly teach them how to be good in front of an audience. At one point, Jack Levi, who is Elliot Goblet, gets them to heckle paintings, and we see them hone their skills on how to deal with a heckler, but it's done in a very Elliot Goblet-esque way, because they're not just heckling people or themselves; they're heckling a painting, and then he encourages them to say what the painting might respond with. So it forces them to quickly think on their feet and come up with ideas that might help them cope if they do get heckled on the night that they have to perform. So all of this gets filmed every day, day after day. And then on top of that, there's the emotional roller coaster that the students are on, knowing that as they get closer to D-Day, they have to deliver a 5-minute routine. And there's also the conflict within the group of that how they sort of interact with each other. There's a wonderful sort of BCD storyline where 2 of the cast members have conflict over material. One of the performers feels like the other one has stolen her premise for a lot of the material, so that becomes a theme. And then on top of that, to add another layer to it, we also have a behavioural analyst as part of the cast, and he works with the comedians, with the wannabe comedians, on their emotional state, their physical state, how to be better presenters, how to own their own confidence, And he also analyses them and speaks back to us, to the camera, about how he thinks they are going. And so when conflict happens, or when at one point one of the performers walks out, storms off, he's had enough, he doesn't want to talk to the cameras anymore, he feels like we're invasive, and he walks out of the classroom. And Steve, the behavioural analyst, has to encourage him to come back into the room or make a decision. Does he want to continue or doesn't he want to continue? So it's very handy to have somebody there who's professionally trained in that environment, because it is dangerous in a way. It's like these people are putting themselves out there in a big way, and they sort of need that protection, I guess.
That's actually a good point, because I have done the School of Hard Knocks course, just a conventional course, and I've done this one on camera, and just doing the course itself, you are already on an emotional roller coaster ride, because many of us are doing it because we want to tick this thing off and we know we're confronting fears. But with the TV version, you've also got the fact that you're being filmed every minute of the day. And that would also go into that cauldron, that emotional cauldron that you're talking about.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you, having done both versions, once with a TV crew and once without, what was the difference between the two?
Oh, well, I think it was the fact that if you're doing it just in a local hotel and you stuff up, well, you've stuffed up once, it's gone, everyone's forgotten. If you hit some blocks or you have some embarrassing moments and it's being filmed, and the director is an asshole, then you know that's going to you're going to be captured, and that is going to be enshrined forever. So it ups the ante that it's not just your journey, but you're being watched as part of a corporate journey that's being captured for all time. I think that's where the extra layer came. Mind you, I loved it. I loved the fact that I actually had withdrawal for the next few weeks of not having 6 cameras around me filming everything. I really took to it. I loved it.
Oh my God, you're a Kardashian.
Yes, I just don't have the same butt. But
well, now let the audience be the judge of that, because there is one episode where Naomi Uematsu encourages or takes the entire class to an art drawing class, and her whole premise is about seeing the audience as one entire organism. You know, she wants you to sort of look at the audience, and her way of instructing or visually representing that is to take the entire class, as you remember, to an art studio and getting them to paint into a nude life drawing class. So she actually brings her own son out. Yep. And everybody has to paint basically his naked body. But it's not just that. She then says, you know what, it might be better if we all get naked. It's a bit unfair that it's just my son who's naked in the room, so everybody get your gear up and let's paint together. So we're in the show, in episode 3, we get to see your butt, Steve. And I got to say, it was a hard edit, mate. Not easy.
I'll actually take that as a flattering comment. Thank you.
No, but... that is a bit extraordinary. But I guess the whole thing about television and creating a show like this is that you do have to push the boundaries a little bit. And the whole notion of introducing a different guest comedian every day that takes the students on a different outing, and those outings are, yes, definitely comedy related, to drive very quickly over a 6-day period, to drive these wannabe comedians quickly towards being good at what they do. Yeah. So it's an intense course, ramped up by the fact that there's also these outings. And the fact that you enjoyed the process of being filmed and being a part of it, you know, I think goes to show that that's being in the spotlight is all about. And if that's what you need to learn to be able to do anyway. So by virtue of having a television crew around you in itself, I think, help people get better quicker.
Well, yes, and it was actually a weird thing because I took to it. I think most of them did. The challenge with having TV cameras around you in a reality TV scenario is that you have to be conscious to not be conscious of the camera. And I just wonder, as you've been looking back, were there times when some of us or all of us or none of us were acting? How natural were we all the time?
Well, I think it's fair to say that as each episode goes on, and I think you would probably acknowledge this, that each day everybody got more and more accustomed to having the cameras there, and so it just became completely more and more natural. You can certainly see, and if you've watched that first episode, you can certainly see this air of like, oh, look at me, I'm in a show, I'm doing comedy, and there's a sense of performance about everybody. Very quickly, we watch all of that strip away. And having things like the episode where everybody's forced to be naked in front of each other, that speeds that process along. Suddenly we come back the next morning after having done that, and the barriers are gone. There's no bullshit anymore. There's no acting. It's all just like, fuck, I'm here to learn how to stand up on stage in now 3 days' time and be funny. And I don't want to fuck this up. It's very clear that people don't want to get it wrong.
It's funny you mention that because I'm recalling now there's a public speaker teacher who said one of the ways to feel comfortable is to imagine your audience naked. So really what you're talking about is that working among the cast the day after we'd all seen each other in ways we hadn't planned or even wanted to.
Well, you actually were very astute and said we had an interview with you straight after that particular event, and after we spoke to everybody about how they were feeling about having what they've just been through. And you even said, very astute man that you are, said, I'm very curious to see how everybody will behave now once we've done this, how we will be as a group together, whether it will unite us or... And, you were absolutely right. Of course, that's absolutely what happened.
Oh.
The group became more cohesive, and you were bouncing off each other. You were funnier as a group together, and that then fed to your own individual confidence, and you can see that sort of start to emerge.
Can I just for the record, in case my wife's listening to this, when you say we bounced off each other, that was not while we were naked.
Not quite. Although poor Lee Ton did get his butt painted by some of the girls in the class, and I'm not sure how he even said on camera, I'm not sure how my wife's going to cope with this bit, but we'll deal with it when it all unfolds. So.
Now, I just want to reflect on the reality TV environment, because on one hand, when you've got 5 cameras, 6 cameras rolling hours and hours per day, some of us imagine that this kind of television is a crapshoot where it's just numbers and you build up enough hours and then someone sifts through them and you might find some gold, versus really cynical people who say, no, all reality TV shows are purely scripted and they just make it look like it's been made up. The big difference is they don't have to pay the actors. So where's the truth? What was your approach in directing, in inverted commas, what was in part a reality TV scenario, but also a documentary? What sort of vision or planning or discipline was needed so that you had something usable at the end?
And that's a very good question. But I suppose it ultimately does come back to the idea itself, doesn't it? Like, the idea itself in this scenario is already sound. The idea of watching somebody start from not ever having done stand-up comedy again to then getting on stage and performing and to doing it in a group and learning how to do that, I think we're all a bit fascinated in that. So that already piques my interest. That's enough for me as a director and producer of content to be able to go, I think I'm curious. I'm curious to see why people want to even do that and what the process is. And then, as I indicated before, I then tweaked what is the normal day-to-day thing of what the School of Hard Knocks does. It literally just has people sitting in that room for a day with one teacher and they work through the comedy. I think visually and, I think that would start to get a little bit laborious, and I felt like we needed to add to it. So I already fucked with reality to some degree. But I knew that if I put those elements into it, plus the behavioural analyst that we also add into the mix that isn't in a normal School of Hard Knocks, class of 6 days. So by adding those elements, I knew I would have enough if I had my cameras rolling when all that unfolded, between hearing what the analyst has to say about everybody's progress, watching everybody grow over 6 days, watching them fuck up, watching them get better, watching them interact with each other and seeing how, knowing full well that human behaviour ultimately intervenes, especially when you're in a pressure cooker situation, I just knew there would be stuff. And sure enough, there was stuff. And we had our cameras rolling, fortunately, when stuff happened. So as an editor now, it gives me enough strands, enough different things to follow. Between 10 students all going through their own shit, the teacher desperately wanting everybody to be great, Steve analysing everybody. At one point, he actually hypnotises one of the students to help him, gain better confidence. Steve Mackey is a fascinating character. Steve Van Appen, our analyst, says at the start when he first meets him, he says, why is he choosing to put himself through this? He can barely walk into a room and lift his head up or converse with anyone, and he wants to be a stand-up comedian? What is he thinking? Why is he here? It doesn't make sense. Wow. Is he torturing himself? So his journey is absolutely fascinating. And after he had been hypnotised and told that all that happened in the hypnotist session was that he was told to believe in himself, really. Yeah. And he did. He took that. It worked. He did. He came out on stage, and it was a different Steve Mackey. It was a confident stand-up comedian, and that in itself makes you go, wow. Maybe I don't even have to be funny. Greg Fleet, at one point, standing at the front of the venue prior to everybody doing their thing, says on camera, he says, you know what? It's just a trick. It's really, the whole thing is just a big magic trick. He said, if you pretend that you're funny and great up there on that stage, you will be, and the audience will be blindsided, and they'll believe you. It's a show. Just believe it that you're funny, and it will happen. He made it sound very simple, but I knew that all the right elements were going to be there. All I had to do was point enough cameras at it. The trick then becomes, unlike editing a scripted show, the trick then becomes going, wow, I now have to piece together a very complicated jigsaw puzzle. I want to follow all these 10 people's journey, so I need to honour their journey. I certainly don't want to disrupt their or change the course through the gift that you get given of being an editor, like they do on things like what's the controversial Married one?
Yes.
The one I'm talking.
Married at First Sight.
Apparently a lot of the contestants on that show say, they've been manipulated. I just take what I get given on screen and I follow that journey. The trick is, how to interweave that into everybody else's journey, as well as the overall picture, and as well as trying to make it funny. It's a show about comedy, so it needs to be funny. And it is. There's some very, very funny parts in it.
Well, that's right. Look, I want to bring those strands together because you've touched on some psychology, some philosophy, and the fact that there is comedy happening as well. And just for a moment, get really reflective, because during the horrific bushfires we had in Australia over summer, I had 2 fringe comedy shows to write, and I lost the will to write comedy temporarily. I thought, this is a trivial waste of my life at this time against so much catastrophe. And it was a little bit after that, I realised that if we are going to come through this with a sense of resilience, sometimes laughter is the fuel for that resilience. And I forged this position that comedy has a noble role to play in life. And I just wonder, if you're looking back over what you've been editing, and you were a stand-up comedian in your past as well, do you think comedy's got a special role to play? And how would you address that, especially as we're going through the COVID-19 pandemic and its changes?
Well, you only have to look at the way everybody's choosing to handle this extraordinary time in history. Everybody, if you are on social media, everybody is being inventive and clever and finding ways in that beautiful Australian laconic sense of humour way, find ways to poke fun, enjoy and laugh at the situation that we all find ourselves in. Well, not everyone, but most people. There is so much funny material out there on the internet about what's going on with us it's almost intimidating. Everybody's so clever and funny and inventive and, of course, cooped up. And they get to a bit like all the students in Is This Thing On, where they're in a pressure cooker and they start going, I'm going to be something crazy. I'm going to do mad stuff. I'm going to film myself, vacuuming in my undies or something and making fun of the whole situation. I think it's vitally important that we laugh and can see the humour in these things. Or what? We look at the darkness, the bleakness of what is happening in the world at the moment and see no hope. If we can't find a way to always laugh at a situation, whether it's bushfires or, COVID-19, and yes, we're talking about death here, Steve, we're talking about people dying. My father died 2 weeks ago. And people die. Death is a part of life. And if we, as people who embrace the arts and are creative and understand that comedy is important, it's almost incumbent upon us to make sure that we keep people entertained through this time. It's the very thing that will pull us through. Now, as you discovered after you realised that, you had a moment of bleakness and thought, what am I doing? Am I really just pissing my life away thinking that laughing jokes about Jesus is funny? Well, you know what? Yeah, it's essential.
Well, actually, there's one other element to this, because you made the point that some of us, people listening to this podcast, are writing comedy and shooting it out straight away and plotting our journey through COVID-19. But there's one different element with longer projects like Is This Thing On, or if you're starting to write something for 2021 or beyond, is that the change in the background in life means the audience, when they finally get to your work, are going to be living in a different reality from when it was first crafted or created. So how mindful of you are that, because you work in a lot of TV projects, This Thing On has at least 2 years of background before we got to today. How do you think it's stood up, and how do you even give that thought when you're crafting content?
Well, and a very good question. Well done, podcast man. I think if you dig too deeply into that, you're going to start questioning yourself and you'll never get pen to paper. I think at the end of the day, you have to trust your instincts because, yes, life does change quickly. And in what we're doing at the moment, it just seems incredible to think back 6 weeks ago, the life that we were living compared to the way the world is now. So life is changing very quickly at the moment. But at the core of it, the heart of the way we all live our lives and what we find funny, nothing really changes, does it? We love, we live, we struggle with sexuality, we fight, we argue, we're greedy, we're not, we're kind, we're generous, we hate. We do all the human things. That never changes. That's where good comedy is rooted, in what we as an audience watch and hear and go, yes, I recognise something in what you're saying as being true to me. And that's the core of all human behaviour. So whatever we go through, whether it's war, famine, COVID-19, bushfires, yes, that's happened through all our, all generations, through all sorts of things like that, and survived and made jokes about it. So, do we just write jokes about COVID-19? Well, probably not, no. But at the moment, it's important to flex that muscle. And if you're a keen comedian and want to keep doing that, then, yeah, there's a great opportunity in this day and age to be spitting out constant, clever material to flex that muscle, to keep you in the public eye as somebody who's on the ball, gets it. But it's also, the people who are doing comedy that's not about COVID-19 are still really funny as well. People who are just, it doesn't change. It's still, life is life, regardless.
Last couple of questions, bringing it back to Is This Thing On? You've been in television for a long time. In fact, 1989, you were even on our screens in the Cole Carpenter, the TV sitcom. That takes us back a little bit.
I was great in that, by the way.
That's not, and so humble about the. No, that was, but you, interestingly, just again, you came back to that from learning theatre and acting at various serious levels here in Australia and also in New York, and you came back and you were doing a TV sitcom, and yet you made that what you would consider two ends of the spectrum integrated into your life.
Yeah, well, for me, but then I came back and within 6 months of being back in Australia, back in Melbourne, I landed this role in a sitcom. And the way sitcoms are made is it's just a beautiful thing. It is the perfect storm. It is a mix of live theatre and television in a way, because you rehearse the show through the week, and then in front of a live audience you tape it twice to a 3-camera studio audience. So there's a live audience like you're doing theatre, but then it turns into television. So for me it was the perfect job. It was like, and I got to work with some incredible people where, and one of the greatest comedic actors, and I think I learned so much from Kim Gyngell, who did play Colin Carpenter. He was a genius. He was a beautiful, beautiful comedic mind, and it was because he understood his character. He knew Colin Carpenter so well, and people would send us scripts for the show, and he would say, "I don't get it. They're just writing dumb jokes for Colin. Colin's a human being. We're taking him out of sketch comedy, two-dimensional world into a 3D environment. He needs to be a human being. We can't just have him say dumb shit all the time, because it's not real." He got it. He understood it. So he managed to find ways to change the script, invent stuff that would give Colin still be that kind of naive person that we all loved that he was, but still made him a real human being. He gave him all the dimensions that you needed, which was just to watch that unfold. He was part of that and change and go, what about if we did it this way? And I'd just be in awe. But, learned so much from this genius actor, comedian. And I have never looked back, really. I've just loved comedy ever since. Went on to, as you said, to do stand-up myself. And, I've always dabbled. Even when I make serious stuff, whenever I'm doing something that's quite serious, I'll find a way to include. I just can't help myself, because that's life, isn't it? Like we were talking about before, despite what we're going through, we're all managing to find ways to see the funny side of it, because that is life.
And over the arc of your career, TV's changed a lot, and certainly since Is This Thing On began 2 years ago, TV's changed a heck of a lot, especially lately. What consequences do you think this last change, with suddenly people binge watching more than ever before, what are the consequences for the success or otherwise of Is This Thing On? How will it impact this project?
It's so hard, isn't it? Because we've been watching the slow demise of what we perceive to be normal television anyway, free-to-air television. And streaming has been slowly taking over, but this has suddenly ramped that up. Suddenly everybody now is on Netflix. Everyone has signed up to some sort of streaming service, and I worry that maybe free-to-air television isn't moving quickly enough. I'm sure they're thinking heavily about how they need to stay relevant, but hopefully they are doing that, because there should be a space for normal free-to-air television. But of course, we turned, even with this Is This Thing On, originally we pitched this show to a number of networks, every network really, in Australia, every free-to-air network, as well as Foxtel and all sorts of places. And although we had incredible interest, there was not enough to get networks to sign on the dotted line. So Murray and myself, as executive producers, made the decision to say, well, you know what, let's just do it ourselves. And in many, many ways, this is a better outcome. The fact that we can release episode 1 as we have on YouTube for people to be able to get a taste of what to expect, and then tease them with the notion that once all 6 episodes are cut, and it's getting close to that happening, is that you'll be able to log on and binge watch the entire season. And so that's us controlling it. We no longer have to worry about a network. So I guess the answer to your question is, get your head out of the sand, networks, get on with it. Find a way to be more relevant, because this has sped up the process of you suddenly being left by the wayside if you don't find a way to jigsaw into the way the world is moving.
If you look back over that intense week of shooting, which took place in Melbourne, when was it, about July 2018? I think.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's right.
What has stayed with you? Was there any particular incident, moment, success, failure, challenge, something that whenever you think back, you go, oh yeah, I remember that moment deeply?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many really, and because I am currently fully immersed in the edit process, which, as I sort of indicated before, there's hours and hours of footage. So it's reliving every day, reliving that week back in 2018, moment for moment, and trying to pick through what should end up in the show, what drives Steve Davis's arc of storyline across this week of learning. Does this go in or does it not?
Yeah.
But I think if you had to pin me down and say, what's one thing that just really stands out, it is the Steve Mackey storyline, who, this guy who, his confidence levels, he even at one point says to me on camera, I just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone. Please, just stop. I don't want to answer your questions. I just want to be left alone. Mm. And as somebody who's producing the show and directing the show, I was torn because I could see the angst in him, but I could also recognise that my job is to find out why. That's the point. He's signed up to do it. And I said to him off camera, I have to keep talking to you. I need to understand what you're going through because that's what I'm doing. I'm making a show about your very journey. I don't want to hound you. I certainly don't want to put you under any undue pressure, but you have to talk to me. You have to tell me what you're going through. And to watch his journey and then to see him stand up in front of a room of 300 people and be hysterical and own a room, it makes you go, anything is possible. Anything. You can do anything if you really set your mind to it. This poor kid, he struggled so many times.
He certainly did, but at the same time, I wonder if the big difference between him and the other of his cohorts was that he just didn't put energy into hiding that, and so we got to see the workings of a human on this really intense journey as well. I don't want to downplay his own journey, but I wonder if part of it is like a swatch watch. You could actually see the workings.
There is, to some degree, that is true, but I think everybody really wore their heart on their sleeve. Kinder Cruz had a meltdown early on because she felt that her material, that she didn't get the sort of feedback she was expecting from her material, and it from really early on, it played into her confidence to think that I'm not worthy. I've done wrong here. She thought it was going to go better. And so that really rocked her world. Okay. And she, everybody pretty much wore their heart on their sleeve. But the Steve Mackey journey, they're all good. Everybody's journey is really fascinating. It is a fascinating insight into human behaviour and human mind and the drive and desires that we want to get that drug, that adrenaline of I stood up on a stage and made that many people laugh at something that I invented. That's pure heroin.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say thank you. The whole journey and the production, as someone who was intimately involved in it, what I saw in episode 1 was, I would actually put hand on heart and say it's a faithful rendition of what the experience was like. So the cynical people who look at that style of television and think, and some possibly do, just over-egg the omelettes and make things worse than they are. It was actually refreshingly nuanced, but still had its drama and its story. So, Stig Wemyss, thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. I do hope people get out there and watch it. And not just people who are interested in comedy, really. It's beyond that. It really is a study in human behaviour. And so hopefully doing things like this helps spread the word about it because, I'd love to do it again. I'd love to do a second season of this thing on and follow another 10 people through their journey because everyone, you can guarantee, is going to be different.
Start thinking about which friend or enemy you might nominate for that now.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.